Hey, and thanks for listening. Before I share my gorgeous couple, Tegan and Rohan's interview with you, I wanted to give you a quick update about last week's episode, which was basically how to communicate your adults-only wedding without getting too much backlash. Some of you reached out on DMs and told me about your plans or what you've already done on your wedding invitations or wedding website with varying levels of success. But I wanted to share the approach that my listener Kayla is using for her upcoming adults-only wedding. This is what she told me. As most of our guests are coming from interstate with children, we sent invites directly to our friends' children, separate to the formal wedding invites, about a movie night and slumber party our kids are hosting with babysitters on the night of our wedding at our house. My parents and in-laws have agreed to come back here after the wedding to be additional support overnight. It allowed us to know that our children had their favourite babysitters and our friends didn't feel like their children were just going to be left at hotels with random strangers. We thought it would be a great way to make sure everyone had a holiday to remember and for all the children to feel included in something. We're having a recovery breakfast catered by a local coffee van at our house the following morning so parents can come and get a coffee or 3 and a pastry before heading upstairs and picking their children up. There have just been too many weddings we have been invited to where we've had to scramble for babysitters interstate, and it just makes attending the wedding more stressful than it needs to be. So anything we can do to relieve that stress for our friends and family is a win in our world. How good is that? Thanks so much for sharing your plans, Kayla. It sounds like a brilliant time for the kids and the adults alike, and I hope it inspires some other couples as well. Okay, so let's get back to my real newlywed couple, Rohan and Tegan, because I'm almost 100% certain that all engaged couples have this same problem. And even though you think it's unique to your family, a bit embarrassing or a bit out of the ordinary, I can assure you that every family has their quirks. There's the black sheep that won't conform, the radical religious one, the workaholic, the party guy, the immature will they ever get it together cousin, the creepy uncle, and sometimes it's just people with completely opposing life values to you. People that, given the choice, you might not choose, but who you share ties and history with. And you'd better believe there are expectations from them when the topic of your wedding is brought up. No, you can't choose your family, and often your relationship with them is not as simple as a two-way street, but more like a multi-laned highway. There are your parents' feelings to consider. What would your sister say? And how does your grandma feel about you inviting her estranged son? It can get real messy real quick, especially when you're talking about who you're going to invite and the roles you want to give them, or not, for your wedding. For Rohan and Tegan, who got married late last year, they certainly had their share of emotion-charged conversations with their loved ones. But I remember thinking at the time that I had never heard of a couple who had handled it better, and I knew that I had to get them to share their approach with you. So today you'll learn where Tegan and Rohan drew the line about what they were going to spend their budget on when the wedding tax bit a bit hard, how Tegan decided to include her father and stepfather in their ceremony and reception, and the tough conversations they needed to have when they opted to cut down their wedding guest numbers. If you're struggling to assert yourself so you can have the wedding day you really want, Rohan and Tegan also have some great advice at the end about how delegating small tasks to your family and friends actually increases their connection to your wedding day and you. Let's get stuck into it. Unbridely is a community of pro-wedding vendors who believe in freedom and integrity in weddings, giving you options, solutions, tips and tricks to create the experience and memories that you and your fiancé really want and deserve. Because we believe that weddings are a team sport. With how-tos, stories and interviews with recently married couples, we find out what went right and what they'd change if they could go back and do it all over again. I'm Camille and welcome to the Unbridely podcast. Hi Rohan, hi Tegan. Thank you so much for joining me on the Unbridely podcast.
Hey, Camille.
So good to see you guys. We want to talk all about your amazing day, but I just wanted to start with, do you remember how many months or years you were planning for?
Yeah, quite a while.
It would have been about
18 months of planning.
But even just then, you were saying, Rohan, before I pressed record, that you felt like it was a major focus still. So even though you had that long lead up.
Yeah, no, I didn't change that at all.
No.
I felt like once you started thinking of it, it just didn't go off your mind, and there was always something that needed to be done or needed to check. Everything took longer than you expected it to.
We always sort of said that wedding planning, like the first thing to do for us at least was to book in that venue. And once that venue is booked, if you're anything like us, once that ball is rolling, it's rolling. Like you are running away from that ball and you are like trying to get there in time, and everything felt like it had to be done right now.
For sure. And so what was the plan, or did you have a theme or a focus that you were working with?
Well, at first we wanted a large wedding. In terms of, for us, that meant having basically everyone we knew. And I guess that was a wishful thinking and a bit of a dream. But then we had an engagement party in 2020, just before everything got a bit chaotic. And we pretty much did that. But what we found was that we didn't actually get to see each other at all that whole night. We were just running between, saying hello to people, and it was
give each other a quick high five on the way past, and be like, right, you go and talk to this person. I'll talk to this person. Bye.
Yeah. So that was a big shift for us. So it made us reflect on not wanting to create that same environment, being able to have a chance that we could connect on the night, and that meant inviting the people that were, I guess, more important to us.
The vibe for us was always to have a fun and exciting wedding. And I think having our engagement party made us realise that we still wanted it to be fun and exciting, but we needed it to be intimate and connected. And for Rohan and I to feel like we were spending the day together and not spending our days trying to cater and people please. So really grateful that we did that, because it changed our day. Yeah.
That's such an amazing insight. So to give the listener context, how many people roughly were at your engagement party?
About 150.
150, yeah.
And then your wedding went down to about how many?
It would have been 100 all up. That was purely based on venue minimum numbers. Because for us, we probably would have liked about 70.
Yeah, I reckon,
that was...
And we loved having everyone there, for sure. I think we had a good number in the end, in the way that it worked out, because we had all the important people, and we didn't feel like we missed out on any family.
I'd love to dig in, guys, because this is fascinating. This means that there are about 50 people who got a ticket to the engagement party, but then didn't get one to the wedding.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you did that?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that you weigh up. You know, inviting someone to your wedding, it's not just an extra number that, pops over to your house. Like, there are a lot of things involved in terms of, yes, it comes down to finance, absolutely, because weddings are expensive, and, every person is going to cost $150, $200 a head. So we've got to consider that. I think another thing that we considered was asking ourselves the harder questions and just deciding, who do we think is going to be a part of our life in the future? Who do we want to honour? The people from our past, maybe people that aren't really in our lives. We see them once every 2 years, maybe they're family members, but they still mean a lot to us. And sort of just deciding those things. And also, who's going to add to that hype vibe that we want as well, because that was also important too. It wasn't easy to cut down that list. It took us a couple of months for sure, because, you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and you'd like to say it's not personal. But
I think, are they in your life now, and do you think they're going to be in your life in the future? I think
for sure. And what are they going to add to the night, really? Yeah.
That's brilliant, guys. And perhaps you could also give a little background, because you're both physios, yes?
Yeah.
And I know this, of course, because I did your ceremony. You have like a whole bunch of mutual friends, don't you, that you've grown up with?
Yeah, Rohan and I are from a small town in Central Australia. We met in high school, So we were like 14 and 16, so very much high school sweethearts. This really meant that a lot of our friends have been a part of the same friendship group for many years. Probably in our super early 20s, we moved to Adelaide to study physiotherapy. This also meant that, again, a lot of our friendship groups were the same. So, that created a really special dynamic because we would have these groups of people that they weren't just there for, Rohan, they weren't just there for Tegan, they were there for both of us because they knew us as a couple in the unit. We'd been together for 13 years before we got married, so they know us very well.
I could tell that at your wedding, that everyone there had a really strong connection with you. And I wonder whether that culling that you did of the guest list, was that the hardest thing you had to do in your wedding planning?
It came up a lot, but I think Tegan's got one on her mind for sure.
The worst bit, if we'll start on the superficial worst bit before we get to the deeper stuff. The worst thing was probably finding like that dress, like the one. I think for a lot of women, when we dream about our wedding days, we're not just imagining the person that we're walking down the aisle to, but we're also imagining how we're going to look. And a lot of that's got to do with finding the most incredible princess dress. So to me, it was definitely a bit of an experience trying to narrow down all of the options. It drove me crazy. And I probably started looking a bit too early as well. So it probably led to me trying on a bit over 60 dresses with my 6 amazing bridesmaids.
Sorry, Tegan, I feel like you broke up a bit there. Did you say 60?
Yeah, probably about 60 wedding dresses. 60.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, I'm grateful I wasn't there for that time.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to go shopping and pick a couple dresses.
I sort of came to a conclusion probably halfway through wedding dress shopping and said to Rohan, this is the first, what feels like an important decision and moment where I can't ask you, what do you think? What should I wear? Or what dress do you think is the right one? Because it was the one secret that I needed to keep from you. And it was the one thing that I felt I just wanted to ask you.
Yeah. I would say I found that the hardest part throughout that process was when the wedding got in the way of us.
Yeah.
On a day that you sort of think is about you and your relationship and celebrating that. And it felt like it was everything but at times when you were just focusing on what other people, like how other people would think and feel and what it would be like for them, and then all this other stuff you had to get done. And yeah, like it just get in the way of you being able to connect and sort of remember that you're a team, I guess. And that was really, really difficult.
Yeah, it was something that was meant to create this incredible sensation of closeness. And yet halfway through the wedding planning, we had never felt more distant. And 13 years on, we thought we had learned everything there was to learn about each other. But we certainly learned a lot, and we grew from that, and we were really thankful for that experience because by the time we got to the wedding, we were incredibly connected.
Yeah,
we had never been closer, or at least that's definitely how I felt. Yeah, I think even more than sort of narrowing down that list and having to choose who was important and finding the right dress and the right venue and the financial aspects, it was definitely the strain that it can put on your relationship and the stress that it adds to trying to work full time and trying to keep everyone happy, but more importantly, just not feeling like we were on the same page all the time.
A lot of couples, they go into wedding planning and there's so much excitement there. There's so much that you get to plan and decide together and choose and, create this amazing celebration. But sometimes the couples then go, holy hell, we have a life as well. And we're trying to do this thing. Sometimes that's the hardest bit, is the realization that I guess you just don't have enough hours in the day. And yet, as you said, Tegan, with your Indiana Jones analogy, that, the ball keeps rolling. You've got to stay ahead of it. But I was just wondering whether it was a lack of time or just the pressure cooker of everything is happening at once.
So timelines were massively stressful, especially when you've never planned a wedding before, you've never been a part of many weddings, you don't know what's involved. And unless you have a good solid wedding planner or some awesome family members that have done this all before, you're just shooting in the dark and you're just guessing and just hoping that it'll work out. So I think there's an element where, definitely a bit of perfectionism set in and you had high expectations for yourself, but you're also just, you didn't know if your efforts would be enough. So you just would try your hardest the whole time, and that definitely led to a bit of fatigue for sure. I think if I was to narrow down the hardest part for me as a single moment or a single event that happened, it was actually one of the first things I discussed with you, Camille, and that was I'm a child of split parents, which means that, I was very lucky to have both an amazing biological father and an incredible stepdad as well. So trying to find a way to involve both of them without offending either of them was something that kept me awake at night and sort of made me delay wedding planning, really, and agreeing on a date and a venue, because I was so scared of letting people down and disappointing people and offending people. And I think that was something that I really tossed and turned over. And probably the worst and hardest part was having to make those decisions.
I remember it weighed quite heavily on you, Tegan.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so perhaps would you like to explain what you ended up deciding?
Yeah, for me, I always dreamed of involving both of my dads. I just didn't know how that would work. I had a couple of options during the ceremony when you're walking down the aisle, having both of them arm in arm, or walking partway with one and then doing a bit of a swap over and walking the rest of the way with another. Another thing I had to decide on was speeches and the daddy-daughter dances, and trying to find a way to make that look seamless and not awkward, but also show them how significant they were to me as well, and have that moment with each of my dads independently as our relationships are. So what I ended up doing for the aisle part was, again, not what I had dreamed of. I believe it was the best thing at the time, and I do believe that now as well, but I chose to walk down the aisle by myself. I would have both of my dads standing at the end of the aisle, and I essentially greeted them, like gave them a hug before I stepped up to Rohan. I also had Camille as well sort of announce who they were and what they were doing as well, and it helped to level that playing field so that nobody was perceived as more or less significant than anyone. And yeah, I guess, it made it a special moment. But I think as a daughter and as a bride, ultimately you do miss out to a degree when you can't make a decision and when you have a dynamic like that. But I guess you've also got to think about what you do have, which is two incredible, amazing, loving fathers that I have very special relationships with. Yeah, I think it was received well by them as well.
There's always, I think, Tegan, going to be a compromise,
Definitely.
unless with every couple that I've ever worked with, almost everyone comes in, has a chat with me, and one of the first things that they say is they apologise for their family. And it's funny because everyone thinks that they've got the different family, or maybe a split family, or, difficult relatives, or there's always some sort of fly in the ointment, and there's an amount of embarrassment or shame about it. And so, yeah, if there's one thing I can get across, it's everyone has to compromise at some point in some way. I don't think anyone has got, inverted commas, the perfect nuclear family anymore, with the perfect relationship, with the perfect history, with, balanced parents and siblings who are all going to, contribute the way that we might have dreamed. I think you made a really considered choice. I thought you did great, mate.
Yeah, Cam, I wish you were there for the reception, because I think one of the most special parts of the night was we actually chose to do like the parent dances before we did our dance. So, yeah, which was a bit different. It sort of meant that I was able to have that special moment with an individual but shortened song for my biological dad. And we got that moment with, 30 seconds of a song that I made them choose themselves. And then Rohan had his moment with his mum, and they danced. And then I had my moment with my stepdad after that with the song that he chose. So we were able to just break that up. And I feel like that moment just ticked that box for me. And ultimately, when I look at how I got to honour my dad's on the day, I was really satisfied with it as a whole, being able to share those special moments.
Nice, nice. So even out of something that was, a little bit of a head fuck, you still made that good. So then talk to me about your favourite parts of the wedding planning. What was the best bit?
Our meetings with some of our key vendors were some of our favourite moments of wedding planning. You guys made it real for us.
Yeah, sure.
And it's definitely, we'd always look forward to those moments, because it would just take you out of the stuff that you were dealing with planning and people making petty comments and having to navigate everyone's feelings and glittering and gluing and doing DIY projects. It made it real, and it made us really connected. So it would have been our interview with you as well as our interview with our photographer and videographer.
Any other favourite moments in your wedding planning or the wedding day?
Wedding day, look, I think this is cliche as ever, but there is something very, very special about the first moment that I got to see Tegan walking down the aisle. It's very much anticipated, but it was truly a magical moment. I get to be almost like still a few feet away from her, but just feel such a connection and like intimacy with her on that. Just all in the way we were looking at each other. And
you have that moment, and for us, I think it sort of wrapped together, what feels like a lifetime, just all in that one moment. And it's a euphoric feeling and a massive achievement and massive sense of accomplishment that you get when you look at each other and you see, your past, your present, and your future all in one. And to be able to share that moment was amazing, and was definitely the best part, and it was something that we always said would be. We were not the couple that wanted to do a first look. No way.
I
always said, I'm like, Rohan, I want to see you cry. If you are not welling, crying your eyes out, I'm turning around, I'm doing it again. But I think
no pressure. Like,
it was that moment, but as well, we made a big effort to be as present as we could be on our wedding day. That was so important, and a tip that I would give to everyone: be present on your wedding day. Put in the effort to be able to have the opportunity to feel calm and focused, and do not get caught up on the small stuff.
I think one of the biggest things that we did to make that happen was actually like putting a gap in the night when after like the speeches had been done, before the next part where it was, I think, cutting the cake, the dances and stuff like that. We actually had a moment where we like ducked out and we could just have a chat for
a moment,
just a few minutes, and
just looked around and got to, we sort of were looking through the glass door. No one could see us, but we could see them, and it was just a moment for us just to take it all in and be like, look at all of these people in our lives that are all a part of all different stages of our lives and all of the different versions of ourselves that we've been, and to have them all in one place interacting and just being there for you when in some way or another you've been there for them throughout your life. Those moments were the best. Seeing our bridal party just connect and love each other a bit too much and like have a groomsman or a bridesmaid dancing with my dad, and having my sisters all together and just partying, and you've got grandma on the dance floor, and you've got your godmother over there with the best man, and just that connectedness was incredible. It was nothing material, I think, out of their whole day after all of that, that made it the best day ever. It was the people there and how you felt about it. And if you can't be calm and present, you'll miss that. You'll miss those moments. If you can let go of those little things that nag at you and even things that might feel big, and just appreciate the day for what it is and what you're trying to do and achieve and who's there for you, you'll have the best time and you'll be present and you'll never regret a thing.
How did you decide where you wanted to allocate your budget?
We had some friends who got married before us, and they had obviously discussions with them, which I think is a really great place to start. A big one for us that we got told to is definitely put the money into the videographer and the photographer. Because those are going to be the things that you maintain those memories for the rest of your life. And the venue as well. We cared a lot about where we were going to be and what that environment was going to be like, because we sort of felt like it was the canvas that you're going to put everything else on top of. And if we have a nice venue, it means that we would basically have to put less effort into potentially extra stuff that we would have to do because it's already just made the way it was.
That was definitely the largest part of our budget. Was obviously the venue, because that included the food and the drinks as well, and your videographer and photographer. They were up there in our wedding budget. And like a tip for everybody that I wish that I knew in the beginning was, as well as your venue, as well as your videographer, photographer, wedding flowers are right up there. They are very expensive, and they are probably just as much as what you're going to pay for your photographer. Deciding where we were going to go with that was something I wish I was prepared for, but something that we found a way around in the end.
Yeah, so like in a way to allocate our budget to those things, we tried to do as much of the other stuff ourselves. So we did like the table arrangements, the settings, and we also did the flowers as well.
So I'm a florist now. No, not really. But it definitely feels like it. My bridesmaids and I got incredibly crafty, and we ended up creating all of our flowers except for our bouquets that I was very strict that I didn't want to be a part of. But our other flowers we made. Our table arrangements, we did all of that. We sourced all of the the flowers and bits and pieces that we wanted to use and created that.
Can I ask you guys, and please tell me if you don't want to answer it, but did you fund your wedding yourself?
Completely.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Not completely, actually. My parents paid for my wedding dress, which was awesome. Right. But other than that, pretty much everything else we paid for ourselves. So, self-funded, which is full on.
Can I ask, so you mentioned, of course, the engagement party culling down to the wedding numbers and everything.
Yeah.
Did you have to have any other difficult conversations with family or friends?
Yeah, we definitely did along the way. And I think that it comes down to the fact that, like, I think a lot of people have their own opinions about what they think should be done, how much they should be involved, and what that sort of looks like. You'll be surprised. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Things you don't even think will come up, and you're like, "Are you serious?" Like, they are 100% serious, and then you have to then meet that with a discussion. So those difficult conversations come from not wanting to let that dictate what we did on the day, and we wanted to stay true to ourselves and what was important to us.
We had some significant people that we had to have really hard conversations with and let them know, I guess, where they sat in our lives and what role they were going to play in our wedding. I think I have 3 sisters, so there's 4 girls, and I love all of my sisters. They're all incredibly important to me in my life. However, it was very important to me for my wedding day to have the people who I was closest to. It wasn't about if you were my sister or my parent or whatever. It was about who knows me the best, who is the closest to me on this day and in this moment in my life. And unfortunately, one of my sisters, we weren't really close friends. whilst we have good conversations, we live very far from each other. And it had been many years since we had connected in a way where we were on the same page, and she could share my vision on the day and be a part of that. So ultimately, it led to me having to make a decision to, in all technicality, have 2 out of 3 of my sisters in my bridal party. And I guess whilst this doesn't look great from an external person looking in, to me it wasn't about excluding a sister. It was about having all of the most important friends that knew me well there with me on the day, and trying to explain that to a sister that you love dearly was very challenging, and broke my heart. It did. Just trying to explain to them that you love them and you care for them, but the right thing for you on the day is to have them there celebrating with you, but not to have them up there, standing next to you on the day. There are only a limited amount of spots, and trying to not get someone to take really personal offense to it is hard, and you are risking the relationship. You are ultimately, when you make a decision for yourself like that, you are risking it all, and you're hoping that they think the best of you and don't think that you're trying to make a public statement. You're just trying to do what's going to make
Yeah,
happy.
I felt like those sorts of things came up as well. Like when we're saying how like overwhelming the wedding planning process can be for us. Like you'll be head in the game trying to do that, and then someone will like sort of perk up and be like, "Oh, like how come you haven't involved me?" I'm like, "This has nothing to do with you and everything to do with how overwhelmed I am." And so please don't take it personally. Trying to explain that to people like was definitely harder than you would think, and surprisingly, and yeah, just trying to show them that, hey, you are important. I'm, hoping to have you involved in this way, and sort of express that to them. But I think being open to them about like where we were and how we were coping, and like being a bit vulnerable in that sense, helped give them a bit of space to take a step back and say, oh, actually, yeah, okay, this isn't about me. How can I support you potentially? And then those sort of conversations definitely went a lot better.
You still haven't written your vows yet, have you? Let me help. In around 20 minutes or so, you can easily write personalised wedding vows unlike anything you've heard before, that will make your fiancé feel like the most loved, understood and appreciated person on the planet. The How to Write Wedding Vows That Don't Suck instant download 17-page PDF ebook walks you through a step-by-step format for your vows, how to find the right words and phrases to describe your feelings and your fiancé, how to write that crucial first draft, and create your final wedding vows masterpiece. So if you don't know how or even where to start, if you've been Googling your little heart out, or if you've been calling them wedding vows, AEIOU, this ebook is for you. Included in there are also some bonus secrets for getting the most out of your wedding ceremony. So make sure you download your copy right now and get Write Your Wedding Vows crossed off your to-do list today. The link is in the show notes. I remember you guys coming in and having a chat with me. I'm sure we were doing something that was vitally important, but we got sidetracked and we started chatting about, like, you'd had these difficult conversations and you shared them with me. And I was just sitting there in awe because in 15 years of being a celebrant, I don't think I've heard another couple handle those sorts of conversations as well as you told me you did anyway. I believe you that you handled them really well. And I said, how did you do it? And I remember you guys saying, it's better to have these conversations now than to kick the can down the road and have to have them later anyway, that you'd rather almost pull off the Band-Aid and say what you need to say and say your piece. Do you recall that?
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a fundamental belief that gives you the urgency and the courage to be able to have those conversations.
It's always something that's been sitting there. Well, a lot of the time it's something that's been sitting there for ages, and you avoid that conversation. Your wedding hits and you're planning, and you either got to address it or you got to suck it up. And it means that you may not get the day that you picture, and you're compromising and you're loving them through gritted teeth on the day. And we didn't want that resentment. We wanted to be true to ourselves.
So good, so good. Can I ask your wedding budget versus what you ended up with?
Look, I think we spent more than I was planning to spend.
And we spent exactly what I was planning to spend. Our wedding probably rounded off to about the 40 to 45. So we had a wedding with 100 people in a venue that we really loved and was definitely one of the more expensive venues in Adelaide because it was such an open space, and we were able to have our ceremony and our reception there as well. So, it was about 40 by the end of it, by the end of everything. So, yeah.
And it was spot on for you, Tegan? That's what
I knew the whole time. And I sort of would mention that and be like, it's probably going to be about, the 35 to 40. And I was like, yeah, right. It's going to be like 20 to 25. I'm like,
I was like, what? Since when are we going to be spending that? And then, look, eventually you're just like, look, this ball's rolling and this is too hard. I'll just turn a blind eye.
Yeah, exactly. And
be
wow.
on the other side.
I think just like a key thing that we discussed later on after this had all happened was like wedding tax is a real thing.
I think it's not even your fault, anyone's fault, but having a budget, thinking it'll be okay. We all have an idea about how much we think something costs. And then you go into the wedding world and that is not how much things cost. It's basically like going on to a holiday, but that holiday is to America and your dollar ain't worth shit.
Yeah.
So, like it was just, it was a shock, like absolutely. And then it just racks up so quickly. And I think like we went to so many venues and we did like a lot of research, obviously in the time frame that we did. And what we uncovered what you would get at the bottom, what you would get in the middle, and what you would get at the top. And we evaluated that. And like essentially what was worth it and what were we willing to do. It was a challenge to see because you basically were left with going, well, I don't want a bare minimum and absolutely just a bare wedding or just not the location I wanted because it would defeat the whole purpose. And obviously then you got extravagant and we were like, okay, I'm prepared not to have that. But then even in the middle, you're just like, wow, that price was not what I thought it was going to be. But like you basically didn't have choice. Like it's just what it is. If you want that type of wedding, you just got to do it.
Yeah. You just suck it up, or you get on Marketplace, you DIY the shit out of it, and you make it happen in your own time. And we did a combination of those things.
We did it where we could.
We chose the things that we really valued and that were top priority. For some people, wedding flowers, that is their dream. And I really admire florists. I think there is some incredible florists in Adelaide. And for me, I was really passionate about my photographer, my videographer, and my celebrant. They were massive things for me. And therefore it meant that, you know what, we couldn't have it all. And we had to compromise. So for us, our decorations and our flowers were that compromise.
And we drew the line there and we're just like, all right, I guess for our venue, we're going to prioritise like that. So we didn't have that stress.
So on the day, you wake up, it's your wedding day. How did that feel?
It was amazing. Like the whole experience was like very surreal.
For me, like waking up on like the morning of the wedding, my experience was very different to Rohan, and something that I worked really hard to get there on the day. It was like bliss. I was so calm and so centered. I woke up in the morning and I chose to sleep in my own room. I went and opened my bedroom door and there was all of these gifts sitting like at my door. I just sort of looked at them and I smiled and I went, I'm not ready for that yet. Shut the door. I went in, like, had an actual bath. Like the morning of my wedding, I took an hour before I decided to walk downstairs and go and have breakfast with everyone. I was just calm and people were like, is Tegan okay? Is she going to like have a meltdown? She's being real quiet. And I just felt really relaxed and ready and like Like everything was being taken care of. This is not me. Okay, you should see me before I leave the house for anything. It's a disaster. So it was like a freak accident that this happened.
Yeah, we almost like reverse.
I don't know. Somebody put something in my bottle of water next to my bed. They must have.
I mean, it wasn't an accident. You planned that, didn't you, Tegan?
Yeah, definitely.
You wanted to be like that.
I had incredibly supportive bridesmaids that were really in touch with just who I am as a person and the things that I stress about. And, they were the ones that were on the phone, talking to groomsmen and talking to you even on the morning of and organising all of those things. So, there may have been things going wrong, but I was none the wiser.
Yeah, when everyone's pulling in the right direction. Yeah, it's unstoppable. So I've got down here to ask you what went really well. Did anything else go really well that sticks in your memory?
Oh, look, I think our ceremony was incredible.
That was exactly how we wanted it to be. Yeah.
Like very intimate, but fun and loving at the same time. I guess that combination, bit of playfulness in it and but really felt connected and created that dynamic. And I feel like it really set the tone for the rest of the evening and just everyone started having the greatest time. And I think obviously the speeches were better than we could have ever imagined. And I cannot wait.
The speeches were the best. Like everyone's speech was incredible.
So much love, but just also everyone just having a great time. So.
Everyone just bantering. And, it wasn't by chance, but our vows went really well as well. Yeah. Thanks to Camille for reading and comparing our vows and helping me being an overthinker and writing way too many words.
But, I mean, this is the thing. You wanted to write your own vows. You wanted to write unique sentiments from the heart, but you wanted to keep them a surprise from each other. So you prepared them, sent them through to me, and all I fed back to you was they're a similar length now and, both really, really long and, a really similar vibe. Like they both had a similar tone to them, so they were complementary. And that's, that's the one thing you don't want to do is have one laugh a minute and one, that sounds like Shakespeare.
I think as well, like that set the tone for the reception because, we very much highlighted that, in the things that we shared and the more private things that we shared in our vows, we were sort of telling everyone that we wanted people to really know us as a couple and to share those really special and intimate moments with us, but by putting just roasting each other for some parts and putting that bit of fun and excitement and silliness, we were also able to, get across to people that we also didn't want people to take themselves too seriously. And we wanted people to have fun and get loose and be yourself.
Did anything funny or unusual happen on the day?
The evening was just full of surprises. We had people doing backflip dance routines at the entrances and for each of the bride party. And we sort of put out there to be like, hey, just, give this a go. It'd be really great. We want you to feel special. And they
fully committed. They committed.
And it was absolutely fantastic. And every single one was just individualized to them. There was just so much of a vibe. We had one of them come through to candy shop and we're giving out candy to the crowd just for fun.
One of our uni mates getting tackled to the ground by a bridesmaid as part of the game.
That was a game.
We had my mum swinging her bra over her head.
At the end of the night is when we're doing our sparkler exit, we end up having fireworks go off. We had absolutely no idea. We did not organise or plan that. That was
not intentional.
That was a gift. So it was pretty impressive and what a shock, but amazing night.
Oh, so cool. So your favourite part of your wedding day, that moment that you'll never forget?
I feel like our dance was really special and it felt like almost it was only just us in the room.
I think it was, what that dance meant. We'd always said that we were going to do dance lessons for years. And it was something that we committed to. And we had 4 or 5 dance lessons. And, when we had those moments, it was, just an opportunity for us to connect. And then on the day, being able to perform that in front of other people, but to have that moment with each other and pull it off and feel really good about it, have fun with it, but also, feel really connected as though, it was romantic and meant a lot to us.
Do you have any tips for those engaged couples who might be listening who need to have those difficult conversations that you were talking about with family or friends?
I think with the difficult conversations, like we said before about what I guess inspired us to have them, is just like suck it up and do it. It is worth it. It is hard. Like there's no part of it that your body's going to feel comfortable with. It's going to feel scary. It's going to feel overwhelming. But I think if you focus on trying to be true to yourself, and that it's like you wouldn't be happy with the compromise without having that conversation, then it's something worth bringing up.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time, it's not people that you're trying to ghost out of your life that you're having those difficult conversations with. You're having those conversations with a lot of the time the people that mean the most.
Yeah.
So it could be, that your mum is way too involved and that you're trying to set healthy boundaries without offending her. Sometimes the nicest thing you can do and the best thing you can do is to actually just suck it up and have those hard conversations, because it means that those moments in planning for your wedding, those special moments that you get to spend, like when you pick your wedding dress or, even on the day, it means that you're not sitting there feeling resentful towards that person because you feel like you've compromised for them or that
your
you...
boundaries have been
Yeah, that's right. So
you're not going to be happy with. Like,
I think if you can have those hard discussions, but also remembering to do it in a way where you're explaining to them that you're also in a really difficult position. And that it's actually really hard for you to say these things to them because you're really
afraid of how they feel.
you're afraid of that you're going to offend them, and that actually is hard for you to deal with.
Like I said before, like being vulnerable with them creates, like, I guess, that sense of compassion on both sides where you want to come from that place. Whereas if it's you versus them sort of thing, it will always almost be a disaster and you butt heads. So, so explaining yourself. So I guess when you don't talk about these things, people are going to interpret like your behavior and your things based on like what's meaningful or significant to them. Whereas if you provide the explanation, the ball is then in their court, and then it helps you make a decision about how valuable that person is in your life. Because if you tell them, this is why I made this decision, I'm under a lot of time pressures, the venue wouldn't allow me to do it, there's budget pressures, it's just not going to work feasibly amongst this, I'm not taking that as a personal attack at you in any capacity. I just want you to know that so that we don't have any like bitter feelings towards each other. When you say it like that, they then have a choice. If they either take that on board, and most of the time I feel like they probably will, and they'll be like, oh, actually, wow, thank you for providing some insight and having that conversation, because they'll want to be involved in your life, and they hopefully receive that well. And if they don't, you then can reflect on the fact that, like, here I am trying to be upfront and honest and true about who I am, and this person is not accepting of that. And then see where that fits with you. And I feel like, especially for us, if we were met with that sort of confrontation where people weren't willing to consider things from our perspective, then it was like, okay, well, I can see where your values are.
I think as well, one of the things that I did in the process of, when I said I had to make some decisions about the roles that my dad's played, the way that I was able to get there and to articulate that and to get them into those roles was actually having to be open and real and have this hard conversation, being really truthful about how it impacts you. And when I say that, some of the things I said to my dad was that I've been dreaming about this day for a large portion of my life, and having to make a decision where I feel like I'm offending someone no matter what I do, that's really hard for me, because I'm doing this because I want to honour you and I want us to have that special moment. But I'm stuck with this decision where I have to choose and I have to make an uncomfortable decision, and it doesn't matter what I do. There's there are compromises that have to be made. So can you think the best of me? Because this isn't about making a statement. It's about Rohan and I, and we want you guys to be there for us. And this is how we think is the best way for you to do that. So, yeah, just be brave.
Yeah.
That's so incredibly helpful. Seriously, guys, there are going to be people listening to this who need to hear that. And it's so incredibly helpful to literally give them the words to use to express how they're feeling and their perspective, where they're coming from, to, give these conversations context rather than I've made this decision, take it or leave it. It's just so much more mature to come at it with what it means for you first, what you'd like to do, and open a discussion about what's possible with the other person. Thank you, guys. It's bloody brilliant. What do you want to tell engaged couples out there? What's your biggest takeaway?
I think like some of the basic stuff is like getting started early. That definitely is a huge tip, and having a rough timeline and trying to set those mini goals and go, right, at this month we're going to book in this vendor. At this month we're going to have this vendor booked, and having a rough timeline. That may not work out, but at least you're aware of what needs to happen, because you don't know what you don't know. And, listening to wedding podcasts, that was a massive help for me to figure that out. So I think those logical tips for wedding planning.
I think something that would be very helpful in terms of like going through the whole process, which would make it basically help you stick to your timeline. You'll be efficient in what you do, and also try and maintain that connection along the way. And that's by booking out like a 2-hour window in your week where you do wedding planning stuff. You don't plan anything over that time frame. You just have it allocated. So if you have it for a Sunday afternoon before you start your week, and you have a picnic that gets booked, and you have to move that 2 hours somewhere else.
Yeah.
And what that will do is basically have a moment where you have to come together, review what you need to do, where are you up to in that stage, what do you need to book next, who's your next vendor you need to call.
Get on the same page.
Yeah, and then you get on the same page. You have that communication about what needs to happen for that. And it makes you both involved in that process, and will basically help you like maintain that connection throughout.
I think another one that was really helpful for me, and something that I thought would be a common trend in a couple of the weddings that I've been to, was delegating tasks, and the importance in delegating tasks to people where that is their strength base. I think a lot of people feel like they don't want to put their wedding on other people, and I want to be a burden to them. I just want them to rock up on the day and have a good time and, and spoil them. And yes, there is elements of that, but what you'll actually find is by giving people a task, they are so much more invested in your wedding day. They love it. If you can give an auntie a craft project, or you can be like, hey, second cousin, can you just like sort out, here's the list of people, can you cut out the name tags, or can you sort out picking the flower girl dresses, here's the color scheme. People love it. People love having a task that they're responsible for, because they're there for you on the day, and for them, that's their way of being involved in your wedding, so that when you walk down the aisle and they see how happy you are and how amazing the day is and how much you're enjoying yourself, they feel like they were a part of that. And they feel like they've given something to you on the day. You're not only helping yourself tick those annoying boxes that are never ending, but you're also giving them that sense of significance and ownership.
You guys fucking rock. I love you guys. It's so good to chat with you again. And thank you from the listeners who are now, sitting there writing notes, and now they've got to go back and listen to this again and write some more notes, because I know that you dropped so many truth bombs in there that other couples are going to come up against in their wedding planning and not know which way to go. And now they've got this. Thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you. No, yeah, we really enjoyed being able to just revisit it and relive it, and awesome to see you again as well. You played a very special role in our day. So, yeah, we couldn't be more grateful.
That about wraps it up for this episode of the Unbridely podcast. For the links and resources we mentioned, please head to the show notes. And if you love the show, please review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're on now so you don't miss out on a single episode. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, weddings are a team sport. Catch you soon.